What on earth was that, Ubisoft? That was probably the single most lazy, uninspired, low energy, phoned in conference from you I think I've ever seen. And that's saying a lot. There was one, count 'em, one new game announced. Well, not counting the annual Just Dance and Rocksmith, which is more of a learning software than a game. But the new Mario Rabbids game was literally the only new game they announced. Everything else was updates to existing games and DLC. Honestly, just really pathetic. It was the standard assembly line of cookie cutter open world games with a million busy work icons on the map to mostly just act as a framework to sell you microtransactions, because that's what Ubisoft is now. Honestly, I think they might be worse than Activision and EA at this point. I didn't think it would come to this, but I think they are. At least, at the very least, EA is listening to their customer base now, more so than Ubisoft. I mean, look, they put out the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and that I think that only happened due to intense fan requests. Activision at least satisfied Crash fans with a fourth Crash game. So they are at least listening to the fan base, but I feel like Ubisoft is not at all. All I have to say is, well, let me get close to the mic for this so Ubisoft can hear me, because I feel like they're not hearing me. Ubisoft, where is Splinter Cell? It's been 8 years. What are you doing? For like 5 years now, people literally, this is like the fifth E3 in a row where people say, oh, mate, this is the year. This is it. This is finally it. New Splinter Cell. It's happening. And then it doesn't. Sam Fisher gets put into so many games that aren't his own game, but he doesn't get his own. He was in some like crap mobile thing. He gets added to like Ghost Recon and Rainbow Six. I have the feeling it's just that those games don't sell well enough for them. Like, their standards are completely changed for what games make money now, because that's their only priority, is just making these giant, like these huge live games that they call them, and just keep adding stuff to them. It's really annoying. On top of no new Splinter Cell, also, once again, they neglect Prince of Persia, Rayman. People have been begging for a new Rayman for so long. They have all these great IPs that they just do nothing with. That's the most annoying part about it. I miss the creative side of Ubisoft that we haven't seen in so many years. You know, the ones that were willing to take a chance on things. I loved the old like UbiArt games that they used to make. That World War One animated game, their 2D game about the World War One soldier. I loved that one. I don't remember its name, but it was great. Child of Light, I think, was them too. So those smaller games, they just seem to have seemingly abandoned the UbiArt thing. They're just throwing all their developers at their big stuff, like just make a new Assassin's Creed, just make more Rainbow Six operators, make another Watch Dogs. Also, I'm convinced that Skull and Bones is canceled at this point, and I just think Beyond Good and Evil 2 is just this mythical thing sitting out there in the ether that doesn't really exist yet, because how many years has it been since they showed that? Michelle Ancel, I was convinced that it was going to be the year finally. I did get one thing right, though. My big, like, out of left field prediction was that they would finally show re-reveal that Avatar game, and they did. That was like probably the biggest thing of the show. And I think I predicted a new Mario Rabbids game, and that was the other big thing. But honestly, I think people forgot that the Avatar game even existed, because I think some people were under the impression that that was a new game, but it wasn't. They announced it years ago, and people just kind of forgot about it. So, and that's coming out next year. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just going to go through my notes chronologically through the show. But yeah, like usual, it was just the Ubisoft machine just keeps on churning away on the same old, samey stuff. So these are just some notes I took while watching the Ubisoft show. There was super French people, which is a given for this thing. Like super French. Like so French I wanted to reach through the screen and throw a white flag at them. So they showed off the newly named Rainbow Six Extraction. And I guess it makes sense that they had to rename it from Quarantine, because what a terrible time to have it called Quarantine. Honestly, I wasn't very impressed by this. They're just using the same operators as in Siege. But I'm a little bit confused. Is it like a campaign? Or is it just another mode for multiplayer? I don't know if they really clarified that. The part about it I found funny was all of them had the word react on them, and it just made me think of it gave me flashbacks to when that one channel, do you remember that YouTube channel that tried to trademark the word react for their reaction videos? That was funny. It just looks really generic. That's the word that best describes that game, is generic. It's got generic looking spiky zombies that you fight. It kind of gives me Resident Evil 7 vibes with the molded. That's what they look like to me. I thought one of them looks just like a Predator. It's called the Apex, and it just looks like the Predator. And it's coming out September 16th. And actually, this is not the only September game they announced this during this presentation, which is interesting. They also announced crossplay for it, which I love that basically everything is becoming crossplay. I love this crazy crossplay future that we're in. I love being able to play with other people that even if they're not on the same system as you. But one of the biggest things I noticed was this thing looks exactly, like graphically, exactly the same as Siege. Doesn't look like there's any improvements. It looks like a 2015 game, which Siege is. It's when it came out. It's mostly the same mechanics, maybe a few new ones. Just really just new maps with aliens now. Or zombies, I don't know what exactly they are. At the very least, during this presentation, the most positive thing I can say is there was none of that cringy fake team dialogue that they love to do. That kind of hasn't reared its ugly head in a while because everybody hates it. But my question is, why use the Rainbow Six IP for this? I feel like Tom Clancy is probably spinning in his grave. Why aren't we getting a Siege 2? Like, I get that they said they want to have 100 operators in the game by the time that game's life is over. I think they're up to like 60 or something crazy like that. So they just keep adding to this 6-year-old game, and they could at the very least have like graphical updates. Have like a giant patch come out one day that like soups up the graphics. That would be nice at least. Rest in peace any hopes for like a Rainbow Six Vegas type Rainbow Six game. Or even something like the canceled Rainbow Six Patriots. I guess the days of a single player and multiplayer Rainbow Six game are in the past. Then they showed Rocksmith Plus, which to be honest seems more, like I said before, it seems more like a tech demo, or not a tech demo. It seems more like a learning software than a game. It's for learning how to play guitar. But I tried it once before. I think I played Rocksmith 2014. But what's cool about this one is it looks like you won't even need to connect it to your console. You'll just be able to connect it wirelessly to your phone and play that, which is pretty neat. And it'll have like a constantly updating playlist too. And it's more than just rock. It's like tons of genres. Not something I'm interested in, but if you want to learn how to play guitar, this looks pretty neat. Then they showed off this game, the Riders Republic, which honestly to me feels like it was inspired by their skiing game, Steep. It just looks like Extreme Sports, the game. The biking looks kind of fun, I think, although it might feel like might make me a little nauseous. And so does the rocket wingsuit thing. That looks cool. But that's also a September game, September 7th, or September 2nd, which to me seems odd. Like, why would you compete against yourself? That's like when EA released Battlefield 1 and Titanfall 2, like, right on top of each other. I'm not sure why you would do that. Seems like a really bad business strategy. And then they moved on to more Rainbow Six Siege. Like I said, I wish they would just make a sequel and not do the whole 100 operators thing. But, I mean, that game's in its 6th year. That's a huge success story, that game. It did not do well at launch, but over the years, it's just gotten more and more and more popular. It's kind of amazing to watch. It also, I think, was a little buggy at first, too, so they've definitely ironed out a lot of that stuff. And they've done map refreshes, changes to the meta many times. The biggest news they had about that was crossplay being added next year. Again, I think it's a great thing. I love to see it. Anytime there's crossplay for anything, I'm all for that. And then they moved on to what they call the quote-unquote live game section, which feels like that's all their games now. It was just all updates. They talked about For Honor Year 5 Season 2, the Mirage update. Again, I feel like at this point we need a For Honor 2 if they want to continue that franchise. Update to Trackmania, shrug. Brawlhalla getting TMNT, shrug. The Crew 2 update, shrug. I'm sorry, like none of these appeal to me. They're perfectly fine if it appeals to you. It's just not something I care about. And then Watch Dogs Legion Bloodline is like some addition to Watch Dogs Legion that's adding the most boring protagonist of all time, Aiden Pierce from the first game, and Wrench, I think he was from the second game. And then they talked about Ghost Recon and how it's its 20th anniversary. They're adding new stuff and some requested fan features to Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Do you remember that game? Yeah, that game was kind of a disaster at launch. Definitely wasn't no Wildlands. That game was wildly successful, but Breakpoint was kind of a failure. And then, like I said before in another video, just like death and taxes, a new Just Dance every year is a guarantee in life. Just Dance 2022, I'm not sure how they keep selling this. And then, I don't know who this dude was, Todrick Hall, who was talking about the game. I was just like, okay. He's saying that his music is in the game now. Something I noticed, I'm not sure when they stopped. It might have been last year, or this could be the first year, but at some point they quietly stopped supporting the Wii and the Wii U, because I was amazed at how long they kept, like, I think Just Dance was probably, if you look back, it's probably the last game that was on the Wii, one of the Just Dance games, because they kept supporting the Wii for years and years and years, way after it was relevant for only this game. Then they moved on to Assassin's Creed Valhalla DLC. I'd actually still like to try this game. I think it looks pretty cool. One thing I found kind of weird, though, is that they're adding one-handed swords, which I was like, wait, that wasn't already a thing in the game? You think that would have been a thing? And then they talked about some new DLC for it called Siege of Paris. And then another thing I'm kind of interested in is they're adding the Discovery Tour, which that was in, I believe, that started in Origins. So you got to kind of, if you don't want to actually play the game itself, you can just got to go on like an educational tour around the map, almost like a virtual museum. It's a pretty neat idea for the game. And then they did it again for Odyssey, and then it just was coming later for Valhalla. Kind of a cool educational tool, I think. I've heard some professors and teachers use it in their classrooms. And they announced it's getting a second year support, which is kind of shocking. Normally Assassin's Creed only gets 1 year of DLC, so that kind of says maybe they're going to work longer on the next game. Then, this was kind of odd and unexpected. They moved to film and TV. Boo! I never want to hear TV again after the nightmare that the Xbox One was for its first few years when Don Matrick would go TV, 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 and he would not focus on games. Never again. They talked about Mythic Quest, that show about game developers, which I don't really care about. And then some movie I've never heard of that comes out soon called Werewolves Within. I got nothing for that. Then they talked about Far Cry 6. They had like a cutscene with Giancarlo Esposito and did like a spotlight on his character, Anton. But I have to say, this game looks graphically really underwhelming. Why does it look so bad, to be honest? It looks like a 360 game. I don't get it. And maybe all their focus is on like making the game world big and they don't really care about super fidelity, but the cutscenes look not good. I know it's not done, but it should look better than that by now. Also, why is Giancarlo Esposito putting on some weird fake accent? He sounds really bizarre. The only other thing that looked cool about that was they have some DLC, which I generally don't like seeing season passes discussed already before the game even launches. It seems really scummy. Like, it implies that content could have been on the disc, but they just willingly didn't sell it with the game so they could sell it to you later. It's scummy. But there's some cool looking DLC in their season pass, nonetheless, where you play as like the franchise's past villains. You actually play as Voss and Pagan Min and Joseph Seed. And what's interesting is it sounds like they got all three voice actors to return. That's crazy for the dude that played Voss. Like, Far Cry 3 was like 2012. He came back 9 years later to do DLC for this game. It's pretty neat. So I probably will check that out. And then randomly at the end, it's like, oh, you know what else is included in the season pass? Blood Dragon. And for like 5 seconds, I got really excited because it was playing like 80s synth music. And I was like, oh, it's Blood Dragon 2. And then it's like, oh, here's Blood Dragon. It includes the first game again. It's like, oh, come on, make a second one. It's pretty disappointing. I think it's just going to be a port. And then the big one, I think it might have leaked beforehand, but Mario and Rabbids 2. It's called Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope. I don't think there's that much to say about it. They showed some pre-alpha gameplay. One of the dudes working on it sounds exactly like Slavoj Zizek when he talks. I thought that was pretty funny. Seriously, go watch that interview. The dude, look for the guy that sounds like he's got this bizarre accent. He sounds like Slavoj Zizek. And if you don't know who that is, look him up. But that's coming out next year. And then it goes to Yves Guillemot. And in between, it keeps going back to these two, like, kind of annoying hosts. I mean, they were just uninteresting, too. Like I said, this whole thing was so low energy and boring, and it just felt so phoned in. But the part that made me laugh was when Yves Guillemot said, quote, everyone's favorite Mario and Rabbids. So I think what he means by... He might have meant the franchise itself, like the combination of the two in that game, or he actually did mean, or I think he actually meant he's putting Mario and Rabbids at the same tier of like fan appreciation, which is the most absurd thing I've ever heard. Mario's got a ridiculous like worldwide appeal, and you go probably anywhere outside of France and say, hey, do you know who Rabbids are? And they'll be like, huh? So the idea that they're even remotely on the same galaxy is absurd. So sorry, Eve. I know you want your mascots to be a big deal, but they're not. But the big thing at the end, which I called, was the Avatar game finally being re-revealed. It's called Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, coming next year, and that's presumably alongside the film or Avatar 2. So just like James Cameron, I feel like Ubisoft is wasting a lot of their talent on Avatar. I mean, Avatar's a fine movie. I just don't think it's the mind-blowing movie that some people think it is. I just wish James Cameron was spending the rest of his life on other things. But he's going to do what he's going to do. And then, interestingly, it's next gen only. There's no Xbox One or PS4 version for that, probably because it's going to be very graphically intensive. But I'm not going to enjoy it if it's just another Ubisoft cookie cutter game where it's just a ton of busy work and samey side quests. So I hope they do something more interesting than that with the Avatar game. I still remember back in the day playing that Avatar game with the Wii Fit board where you have to balance the Na'vi on the Banshee. That was interesting. But that was basically it. They're like, yeah, that's it, bye. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That was terrible. Like I said, one new game basically, which was the Mario Rabbids game. And also, like I said before, Beyond Good and Evil 2, where is it? It's just gone. Same thing with Skull and Bones. I'm just waiting for the day that they said, oh yeah, it's canceled. Unless they have. Have I missed something? Have they announced that it's canceled and I just didn't hear about it? But yeah, that was pathetic. So many neglected franchises. I feel sorry for like the fans of Rayman who've been waiting so long, and Splinter Cell. I'm just like a fair weather fan of that franchise, so I'm not super caught up about it not being back. But even I loved Blacklist, so I'd like to see another one. But Rayman, I don't know how long it's been since the last one. And Prince of Persia, didn't they just remaster one? That was probably just to get those people to shut up. It's like, all right, shut up. We did something with Prince of Persia. So yeah, after that pathetic showing, I honestly think Ubisoft is the worst among Ubisoft, EA, and Activision. It's a weird day that they've taken the crown now. The crown of garbage. Did you guys watch that mess of a conference? Because if you didn't, I envy you. What did you think of it? Did you think it was as bad as I did? Are you upset to see yet again all those series neglected? And if there's even anything to be excited about from them, what is it? So I really hope Xbox and Bethesda tomorrow do not drop the ball, because that was really disappointing. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope you stick around and check out more of my E3 coverage.